Hi there, this is Jen, and thanks so much for stopping by today. Today I have a fun card, a mixed media card using a stamp set from a Visible Image. So this is a design team project for Visible Image, and I am using this really beautiful stamp set called Where Flowers Bloom. It is a big, beautiful stamp set, one of my favorites actually. It's kind of hard to pick favorites with Visible Image, but this is got to be one of my favorites. I absolutely love kind of the splatter on the flower. It's just really beautiful. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab that biggest flower, and I am using a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock, which I didn't need to do, but a lot of times I'm not really sure if I'm going to add water or what I'm going to do in the background. And so I always grab the Bristol Smooth because it takes water well. But I did not end up doing that in this video, so another cardstock would have been just fine. But I'm going to take my Versafine Black ink and stamp that up a few times since there is a lot of area to cover on this stamp. It took me a few times to get that inked up really well. And once I have that done, I'm going to go ahead and cover that with some clear embossing powder. And I usually, when I'm using Versafine, use clear embossing powder unless I just really do not want kind of that shine that it gives, because it does take so long to dry, and I am great at getting my hands in it and getting it smeared all over the place. So I do prefer to kind of seal that with some embossing powder. And then I'm going to take my heat tool and melt that embossing powder. Such a fun process to watch, especially on video. Is kind of cool. And then I'm taking some Distress inks, and I'm just going to do a blend of 3 colors over the card, starting with the picked raspberry. So I'm just going to take my blending brush and add that picked raspberry kind of to the bottom of the card. And then I will move on to carved pumpkin will be the next color that I'm going to go ahead and use for this. And then the last color is mustard seed. And when I'm blending the colors, I'm just trying to go over the previous color a little bit to kind of get those colors to blend together and have a nice blend in the background. And then after that, I will go ahead and I'm going to use this die from Visible Image. It's a broken mesh die is the name of it. And I'm going to use that on the background. And I didn't want any of the ink to possibly stick to the die, which it probably wouldn't have because the die has got kind of this coating on it, which is just a fabulous a design. But just in case, I did go ahead and use my anti-static bag to make sure that none of that ink transferred over to the die. And then I am going to add the die, and I'm only going to cut the top part. So I'm doing a little bit of partial die cutting. So basically I just sandwiched the end portion that I wanted to the die to cut, and then left the rest of it hanging outside of my sandwich for my cutting machine. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut each side so I can get that frame removed so that the top of it is just the die portion and not really that kind of square area. And then anything that's left in the middle, I'm going to take my craft knife and cut along. I'm not measuring or anything like that. It's fine with me most of the time for things to be a little bit imperfect. And so I'm just going to go ahead and kind of eyeball that to get those other little pieces out so it's kind of clean on the top. And then I'm going to trim a little bit off of each side and the bottom portion of this panel because I will be adding it to a black background, and I wanted a little bit of trim around the outside. And so here is my a black cardstock. This is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm taking some acrylic paint on just a piece of plastic leftover packaging, and I'm taking some other stamps from the Where Flowers Bloom stamp set, and I'm going to dip that in the acrylic paint and apply that over both the panel as well as I grab another stamp, which is kind of like a I don't know what you want to call it, like kind of like a string. It looks like string, like a mess of string or something like that. We're going to use that stamp as well to stamp the background as well as the colored panel that I did. I am using a paint because it dries very quickly. You can also use white pigment ink, but it tends to dry a little bit slower, and so that's why I like using the acrylic paint. And also the acrylic paint kind of gives a more distorted version of the stamp. It's not going to be quite as clear as using an ink. So once I've got that done, I'm going to go ahead and take my panel and use a little bit of double-sided tape and adhere that to the black background. So it's just going to have a little bit of that kind of a white stamped area in the back showing through to the front. And then I also am using the word from the stamp set that says bloom, and so I have white heat embossed that onto a piece of black cardstock. I'm just going to add a little bit of adhesive to the bottom of that and kind of push that into like that little slot there of that grid die. And then I also take a piece of double-sided foam just to keep that popped up a little bit. And of course, I am adding a little bit of white splatter and a little bit of black splatter. And then I do also add a few different enamel dots in black and white. And that's going to finish off the card. And I love creating with this stamp set, and I hope you love what I created. If you did like this video or find it informative, please go ahead and give me a thumbs up. As always, I thank you so much for taking some time to spend with me today, and I hope to see you next time.